And they're gonna have a gospel group because
We will call to order the August 3rd Committee of the Whole, August 2nd, excuse me, Committee of the Whole meeting. Clerk, can you call the roll?
Babcock,
Yes.
Teddy,
yes,
Flock,
Yes.
Malaco,
Here.
Simon,
Here,
Gustafson. Here. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment.
Was that a pattern? You got these two to do it.
Is there anybody like to make public comment tonight? No? Nancy, good. Public comment on this meeting or?
I'm sorry, no.
Okay, very good. We don't have any agenda items tonight. So what we have for you tonight,
Minutes.
The minutes, you got
Minutes.
minutes.
oh, I went right through those. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the July 18th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting?
So moved.
Motion in a second. Any discussion? Is that a full throated second?
You good?
Call the roll, please.
Teddy,
Yes,
Babcock, Flock,
Yes.
Simon,
yes,
Malaco.
Yes.
Thank you. I already jumped into and passed public comment. And we do not have agenda items for the committee meeting tonight. So you get a couple short presentations tonight. And so I want to first turn it over to Deputy Chief Tom Perrone for a little presentation on the Police and Fire Commission and the police hiring process.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Appreciate that. So tonight, where would you prefer I stand? Would you like me up front, right here? You can stay right there. Okay.
I'm not getting up.
Fair enough. So I was just asked to come and speak about essentially what the Police and Fire Commission does. Leanne Jones, who is the chairperson of the committee, is out of town. So I'm just here in her stead. I'm just going to briefly go over, touch on the main points about what the commission does, and I will be happy to field any questions as best I can after that. So the Police and Fire Commission, every municipality with more than 5,000 people and less than 250,000 is required to have one. And the commission consists of 3 commissioners who are appointed each to a 3-year term. So our commissioners are, and I'm not sure if you've met them or not, it's Leanne Jones, Mark Nitko, and Dave Jacobson. And then we also have a secretary, Victoria Eggers, and Chuck Stanikis is legal counsel. And I sit as a representative for the police department. Essentially, the duties of the Police and Fire Commission, they are responsible for hiring, firing, and discipline when necessary. With hiring comes the creation of initial eligibility lists. So the testing process, compiling the lists, and offering jobs. And then as far as those 2 lists, there's new hires, there's lateral hires. The processes are somewhat similar. With new hires, we do have a written exam, whereas with laterals, we just have the oral component, the oral interview component.
Can we ask questions?
Please come. Yeah, go ahead.
What's a length of a question on a test for police? I have no idea.
So as far as the
You said there's a written test.
sure. So, okay. So for the initial hires, there's a written exam. So after applications are submitted, there's a date set and everyone will go through a written exam.
How long is the exam? That was my question.
Sure, and it depends on who's providing exam. There's several different companies. In the past, we've used a company called IO Solutions. There's another called Standard Associates.
Typically, probably about 3 hours time
Okay.
frame. It's almost like it,
But,
like when you had like the start times, you know.
Oh, really?
Get it all complicated.
Different companies potentially have different.
All
tests.
on, but
Oh, for sure. Oh, they absolutely do. There's
Test date.
Yeah.
That's proprietary.
I didn't know that.
Yes. And they do that so they can sell their own study materials.
Gotcha.
Sure.
Of course.
So, does that answer your question?
That was it?
Okay, and just to kind of get into that a little bit further, kind of answering some of these other questions. The test could be administered either through a third-party vendor or the commission can administer it themselves. They can purchase tests, administer and practice the test itself. After grading, each candidate has to get a score of 70% to move on to the next phase. And the written component comprises 60% of their total grade. If they pass that, they'll be invited to an oral interview, which comprises 40% of the grade. And they're all, was it 8 questions for the initial?
For the initial.
So, and they're all asked the exact same 8 questions, and the commissioners will grade the responses on that. And again, that's worth 40% of the grade. Those two totals together comprise their final grade on the initial list. After the initial list is put out, candidates can claim preference points. So that's either military, prior military experience or college. They can't accumulate points, but it's worth an extra 5. If they claim points in writing, they can get an extra 5 points added to their score. Then the final list will be put out. Then they'll get ranked in the order in which they scored on their exams. So, that's that.
Usually how many applicants?
Uh,
Frankly, I know
The numbers have been dwindling. I remember when I went through, I think there was 160. I think the last time through we had 9 show up to the test.
Yeah.
About 9.
And do they pay a nominal application fee or no?
They do not. No, in the past, we've done that in order to try and encourage more applications. We've waived those fees. And as far as the final list too, if we have a certified candidate, police and fire statutorily can jump down to a candidate who's currently certified. If they're 5th on the list, 6th on the list, 2nd on the list, they can jump over those other names in order to select the person who's currently certified. And then as far as the lateral hires, essentially the only difference is you need a candidate would need 2 years full-time continuous service with their current department in order to be considered as a lateral candidate. And then that's actually a separate list. Are there any questions about the lateral hire list or the initial hire?
When did they end the physical?
So the physical is actually it's not actually a requirement for hiring. It's actually a requirement for the academy. So that's why it's usually offered down to the academy. We have done in the past where we've asked candidates to take a pre-test, but they don't generally offer that anymore. The last person who was doing it was Deb Alms, and who worked for NITAB, I'm sorry, in the area, who does all training and standards for this area. She retired, and there's not really anybody who does it anymore. So it's not something we've done the last few tests.
As far as being offered or as part of the testing process, I think it's probably when you were on there, it was actually part of the test process. You did that before you got invited to the written. There's been some question as to the constitutionality of that, like it's.
That's what I thought. I just didn't know when they actually ended it.
It's been many years, but yeah, there's been losses like that as far as.
Yeah, I know we rolled it in from being an actual graded to just being a see if you can do it kind of thing, because they have to do it at the academy, right?
Yep.
Correct.
How many chances do they get to go through? Is it still 3?
2.
2.
And at what stage is the psychological evaluation done?
Sure, that would be part of the conditional offer. So after a candidate has been selected from a list, they'll be given a conditional offer, and the conditions of employment are generally passing a medical screen, psychological, and a background, in addition to anything else that the commission deems might be necessary. So that would be the time. If they fulfill all those conditions, they'll be given an offer of employment. Beyond hiring, the commission also takes care of promotional exams. Those are conducted virtually the same way. So anybody choosing to test for promotion, there'll be a written exam, an oral board, and then the list will be compiled. Again, they'll have an opportunity for preference points. Any questions about that? It's very, very similar.
What ranks are they testing for now?
It's still sergeant and lieutenant. The last component of the Police and Fire Commission is discipline. So the chief of police can administer discipline up to 5 days suspension. Beyond that, they'd have to seek approval of the Police and Fire Commission. In addition, the Police and Fire Commission would also serve as a appeal board if there was some type of discipline that was handed out that they disagreed with. The Police and Fire Commission be called to hear that for the officer.
And just general information, these meetings are open to the public, except when you have to, of course, go into executive session, and they happen.
Yep, they are susceptible or not susceptible, but must follow the Open Meetings Act. So they are scheduled twice a month. It is posted, the agendas are posted, and they're for anybody. We'd love people to come.
Are they held?
Yes.
They're here
They are here in Village Hall. Yes.
First and third Wednesday of the month.
And did tonight's meeting
It
go?
was canceled, wasn't it?
Tonight's meeting was canceled. So Leanne Jones, who's the chairperson, she was out of town. So we canceled tonight's meeting.
I think I did get an email on that. Okay, thank you.
I guess, going back a little bit, one last question. Your police and fire had decided that they were going to do the proctoring for exams. That's worked out for you? Is that what you're going to continue doing or?
So this is actually going to be the first time around.
That's the first time he's ever gone through the actual process. So yeah, it worked out last time very well. I was at the testing and. I mean, basically the proctoring part of it was, you know, they'll send somebody from the company to sit there and read the 2-page instruction booklet before you start taking the test. So all they do is just mail that with the test and with the police and fire commissioners, one of them reading it. And giving instructions, just word for word according to that, just like a regular proctor from the company might be. So it worked out very well. And then those tests were, after completed, they're boxed up, sent to the company for grading.
How long of the turnaround?
It's fairly quick. I think it was like, I want to say it was within 2 weeks, but like closer to a week. It was very quick.
And then when are you going through the next testing process?
Sure, if I can address that. And I just, real quick, I just want to piggyback off that a little bit. So we are going to change the process just a little bit because the numbers have been down. The companies traditionally require 50 applications regardless, and they charge $1,500 for that. Because we've had significantly fewer than that, we're actually going to conduct the process completely in-house. So we'll accept the applications at the Roscoe Police Department. We will vet them ourselves to make sure everyone's meeting the minimum requirements. And then the Police and Fire Commission is actually going to be ordering the tests, self-proctoring and self-grading. So that was just a cost saving measure essentially. And then we're going to be shooting for early October for testing.
So physically, where do you do this? Do we have to order tables or benches or desks?
In the past, we've done it Harlem Roscoe.
Roscoe Station 3 on Willowbrook Road. It's
Oh.
a pass where we
Oh,
conduct
okay.
those tests. They have all the tables set up and everything.
Great to have partners.
Yeah, so, but yeah, this would be the first time that we do, I mean, we do take laterals ourselves in for the applications. But in the past, we've always had those sent to the company and they've got making sure that it was all in line. We are gonna try it ourselves this year just because of the low numbers, like I said. We'll see how it goes this time. Hopefully, we don't get 100 of them. I mean,
I would love
hopefully we do.
I'd love to get 100.
Yeah, it is, yeah, we didn't feel like we quite had enough to do all the time.
We've done it in the past.
Yeah, it has been done, but
In the past.
it's been a long time.
It probably has been, but we used to do it all ourselves.
Yep.
Everything from beginning to end.
Yep.
Is
So,
there a state statute that says the list must be prepared by such and such a date?
Statute allows for the commission to determine how they'd like to conduct the test. It can be self-proctor, third-party vendor. They're given leeway on
It
that.
does have to be posted though, and the way the statute reads, it has to be posted here, at least a local newspaper, within, I believe it. 10 days, I believe is what it has to be posted for on any of the things that they do as far as.
The announcement there will be testing is posted.
Yes.
Yeah, and then there has to be a finish date as to when those applications are to be in by. In order for them, but they also do post it on Blue Line, stuff like that. We take out like Blue Line, that's where we know anybody goes, so check to see what's
But
jobs are out there for police.
I guess I didn't ask the question
Yeah.
clearly. The drop dead date by which your department has to have this process concluded and the list prepared is
What day is for?
May, June,
Wednesday.
July, August.
We're shooting, so we're waiting on our current web designer to design the application and get it posted to the website. Everything hinges on that. So as soon as we have that completed and ready to go, we will post the testing and the closing of the test date, and then we will establish the date as well, like for the actual test. And right now, we're shooting for early October.
We can test whenever our list gets low enough. There's not a statute date. that we
It says
have
by
to hit.
December 31st, you have to have your. business
Whenever the list
conducted.
either gets low enough
Yeah.
or it's old enough. You can jump in if you want, but
Yeah.
that's when they have to test. So it could be every year or it could be every 2 years.
So list is good for 3 years, and then is if it expires, you can test, which we are actually exhausted our list right now for a new hire. So by statute, we have to carry a list, even if we weren't hired right now, by statute, we still have to have a list or a testing process and then get that posted. The other thing we do is like if we are starting to get, especially back when we have like, 50 people on the list. Once we start to get, past maybe 15 or something like that, and the scores are really getting low, you can retest and then combine lists, but then after 3 years, let's say that current list was already 2 years old. In another year, those names would drop off from the new list, but then the ones that had retested or tested that second time are good for 2 more years after that. So lists are good for 3 years.
Thank you.
How are our staff levels right now? Are we trying to fill so many spots right now?
We've got one in the academy right now, and we're still one short,
How long is academy now?
16 weeks.
And how long is probation?
18 months for new hires and 12 months for laterals.
And FTO is minimum of 3 months. So usually from the time we say we're gonna start testing and actually open up for applications until we get, as long as everything goes well and we already have an academy set like a few months from when we're testing. We usually will not get that officer in a vehicle solo answering calls by themselves without an FTO or anything for right around a year. It takes us to get an officer in the driver's seat to start answering calls. So it's a long process. Thus why we have contracts and stuff like that now.
Anything else you'd like?
Just that, again, I appreciate you letting me come here and do this. I have been on the Police and Fire Commission that long, so I apologize if I wasn't as polished as I maybe should be. Invite me back in 6 months and I will blow the doors off this thing. I
Just
promise.
promise, don't give us the test. I don't.
Well, I tell you, you did a great job.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate it. If anybody's questions, feel free to email me, call me, anything like that. If you think of something anytime, I'll be happy to get back to you and give you as good an answer as I can, or I'll find it for you.
Right, so that leaves me 6 minutes.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
It's not.
That'd be something that you could only talk for 6 minutes.
Let us set the timers.
I want to zoning part 2. Started some very broad zoning stuff, a couple of meetings ago. And I did try to pick something that could hopefully be shorter tonight. Planned unit developments. Planned unit developments are a powerful tool in our zoning toolbox. Our ordinance does a good job as it should of describing what they are. Planned unit development is when someone is proposing a multi-use development over a large parcel of land that would include modifications to conventional zoning and subdivision regulations. This is established as a privilege that can be considered by the village only in direct response to the accrual of tangible benefits from said planned development to the village and to the neighborhood which will be located. What a planned unit development is most development proposals we get, when anyone's building anything here, residential, commercial, industrial, it's usually developing a single piece of property. And there are zoning rules, as we learned last time, that apply to each of those districts, and they're expected to follow them. When they can't follow them, they apply for a variance. I'm testing from past presentations. But when someone, we've only had it once, but this is only, to my understanding, this has only happened once in the village of Roscoe. I think it's a tool we employ less frequently than other municipalities. And the one we have is all of this magenta-ish color. I don't know if I can draw on it or not. But it's this whole area that has the Schnucks, the commercial plaza around it. Now the Starbucks in the outlot, the CVS, the Pizza Ranch, everything on down the line. It's all commercial development along the Hononegah Road frontage. It extends all the way up to the Mercy Clinic at Prairie Rose, and then this residential loop of multifamily associations, which we've become familiar with over the past months because it abuts the Roscoe Township property. So this was all done as one proposed development. And it's someone saying, I have a big piece of land and I want to propose its multiple facets of development all at one time. And I want to work through kind of our own, the developer's own set of rules that will govern this so that it doesn't strictly follow the rules of every individual zoning district. One thing we did, I don't know, back in the late 90s, I think, when this was approved, and if I had a time machine, I'd go back and stop us from doing it, is we created an overlay zoning district, the CPD, a commercial planned development. I think a more appropriate, more common way to do this is, even though it's a PUD, and you're setting your own rules, you still identify what sort of the appropriate governing district is within it. And if something was commercial, you still give it an overall commercial zoning designation and a multifamily residential or a single family residential. That helps us down the road with a number of different ways to evaluate what's happening at any given chunk of this. And it also helps us, we often have to put together something called a zoning verification letter. If there's someone seeking lending on a property, if there's a sale of a parcel, we have to put together a zoning verification letter. We indicate that the zoning is CPD. Someone looks in our ordinance and says there is no CPD zoning. There's no rules associated with CPD zoning. And then that gets bogged down and they have to see all of the PUD development documents. So if we advance these again, and I think looking near range, the next 3 to 5 years, I think there's some big pieces of land where there's initial talks of potential multi-use developments. And I think this would be an appropriate tool to use. So the comprehensive plan itself, or excuse me, the planned unit development itself follows a process much like we talked about for zoning changes, for amendment, for text amendments, for variances, for special use permits. It will start with public notice to everybody. It starts with, we actually detail that it has to start with a pre-hearing conference where they come present their plans to staff and even work through that in advance of the initial approval process. And it will go through a public hearing at the Zoning Board of Appeals, and then come to Committee of the Whole and Village Board for full approval. But it's a tremendous level of detail that is proposed because they are basically committing to what they're going to build in very specific detail, even down to all of the landscaping, every bush and tree that might be planted is, and building sizes. In some cases now, we would have to include building elevations because now we have anti-monotony requirements that we wouldn't have had then. I want to point out, so we give ourselves authority to review this based on potential benefits to the village. Our ordinance lists what some could be, but an applicant is free to come up with additional ones as well. It's not necessarily a checklist where every box has to be checked, but this is establishing things we might be looking for. One is a beneficial common open space. A common open space in a planned unit development should be integrated into the overall design and have a direct functional or visual relationship to the primary buildings and not be of an isolated or leftover character. Our ordinance speaks to how taller buildings should most appropriately be integrated into a planned unit development in such a way that they don't have an adverse impact on adjoining shorter or lower buildings. We want the plan to address all functional and mechanical features. So if there's any exposed storage areas, trash and garbage retainers, machinery installations, service areas, truck loading, we want to see how those are integrated and how they're made as visually unobtrusive as possible. We would prioritize an energy efficient design. If someone came forward with something that was advancing green technologies or incorporating wind power generation or solar power generation or water reduction, there's any manner of green initiatives, building materials, recycled materials that could be proposed as part of a plan like this. Landscape conservation and visual enhancement could be a feature. Innovative surface water, stormwater drainage treatments proposed. We mentioned that the conservation of special features such as streams. What advantage would be minimizing tree and soil removal, conservation of landscape features or geographical features such as streams, ponds, groves, and landforms. The addition or use of larger trees, shrubs, flowers than would otherwise be required by ordinance, or introducing other architectural amenities. So what we're saying is, if someone wants to come in and says, we don't want to conform strictly to the rules of your zoning ordinances in each of these different categories, here's what we're proposing. And we have the chance to evaluate that. Let's see if we agree with it. And then I should approve it. We do that in, like we would with the plat, we would do it both in tentative and final form. So we would have an initial presentation of sort of what their tentative plan of attack is. Once approved, all of the detailed engineering and design work. Literally, they have to present almost a set of construction documents. Then after that, if you make it through all those hurdles and the village says, yes, we like what you're proposing, we think it has value. Then they're locked into it. And then there's a whole nother process, and it's a process that we have had to do a couple of times in this CPD, in this PUD, is if someone wants to amend it, if they say, time has passed, and in a case here, sprinkler laws changed. And when all of these buildings were built out there, they didn't require interior automated fire suppression. And fire code changed after the adoption of this plan and became anything over 3 units. You could have a 3-bedroom unit, and anything above that would require fire suppression. So I'm going to turn the zoning off on this real quick so you can see it more clearly. But this large central area remained undeveloped for a long time. And it was because the developer couldn't build the type of buildings he wanted and the type of buildings that were initially approved. We did an amendment to this PUD last year, maybe even the year before at this point, where we maintained the multifamily nature of it, but we just went with duplexes, a series of 3 different sizes and footprints of duplexes. There are thresholds established in our ordinance that determine if an amendment is minor or, I don't think it's major, minor or substantial, I think. And it's very clear. It is a lot of yes, no questions. Have you increased the development density? Have you increased the impervious area? Have you decreased green space or landscape areas? If they comply with maybe a checklist of 8 or 10 different things, it can be considered a minor modification and simply approved by the ZBA as part of a design review of a minor modification. If it can't comply with those, it starts its whole process over again with a public hearing, ZBA, committee of the whole, and board. I hope it's something that I hope we have the opportunity. I hope that there are developers looking at large enough pieces of land to do this. I'll share with you when I'm sort of allowed to. I think right now, it's just, I won't say anything's imminent, but I know that there are 2 large, I'm talking large 75-acre plus pieces of land where there's interest by viable developers to do a multi-use PUD. And a lot of this is predicated on hopefully getting utilities to these areas. Questions?
The one that does exist, do we refer to that in total as prairie rows?
We do.
And with the duplexes in that center portion that we approved, will that then be, once those are built, will that then be completely developed?
No.
There's still some lots
Yep,
there?
it was still all of this to the north, everything north of what is that called? The Prairie Rose Drive at the top. So at the top, I always think that sort of looks like a heart. So at the top of the heart, all of those, and look at how specific those are. See how all those parcels are put together like a jigsaw puzzle? That's because the master document had specific buildings in each of them with specific private drives that interlocked in that fashion. That's dead. That isn't going to be built as proposed. So we have started down the path once or twice with someone looking to purchase that and redevelop it. That would be an amendment to the PUD. But we haven't gotten far enough. No submittal has been concrete enough to determine if it would have been a minor or substantial amendment. Someone went far enough to hire a civil engineer to put together spatially accurate concept plan, but it's always been a matter of land ownership and willingness to sell. And there's been a lot of starts and stops out here.
Is that a single owner of everything out there?
It is. It is. It is, I don't know if he is the owner. Technically the owner, but he is certainly the agent of the owner is Dennis Gilligs.
Gillig?
Yeah, Gillig, the gentleman who led the presentation
Yeah,
at the community center up there at Prairie Rose. I will tell you that the PUD left this open space north of the Chinooks and south of Prairie Rose as a blank slate. Nothing was proposed for that. So that's a big to be determined component of it. That is a spot that has had some interest gauged over the years.
is our Rinaldi on it?
He does own that. El Rinaldi owns that piece. He has, there's been early attempts to perhaps purchase all of it from him and do a multi-use development that would be a PUD within a PUD almost, is how we would evaluate it. It would go through the whole process. He has also contemplated dividing it and selling off little chunks. And again, to my understanding, this developer and landowner have never come to final agreement on purchase price.
And how do sewer and water run out there?
This is fairly well served.
The sewer and water always come through here too? We vote on everything for sewer, or is that different?
No, we play very little role in sewer and water, unless we are, because obviously we don't have our own utilities. Almost the entire county, with the exception of South Beloit, probably is served by Four Rivers Sanitation Authority.
The reason I asked this, Scott, somebody asked me in Hawks Point because they're out there marking for water, but that has nothing to do with us.
No. We don't, that's North Park Public Water Supply.
Oh,
So none of that is under our control. What I would describe we have with both of those entities is a cooperative relationship. And so what we've always promised to do to both the sewer and water districts is to not undermine them. To not, if they say no to somebody, we won't say yes. But they have governing ordinance, and sometimes it's health department. A lot of times with sewer matters, it's the health department. Green County Health Department has initial say or initial authority over whether a development must connect to sewer, whether sewer needs to be brought to something, whether the soils are appropriate for a septic field, or the development is appropriate for a septic field. And then the sanitary district follows their wishes and authority, and we follow theirs. So it's kind of a chain reaction. We turn sewer and water on. If I just turn on sewer, those are all the red lines you see that go through the property, and so it loops around the public roads. This wouldn't show all the private stubs going to buildings. This would just be all the main lines. And if we put water on, that's now the blue. So that area is adequately, thoroughly served. I can tell you that as part of this development in the center, it will require the extension and connection of the sewer main from south to north and installation of new water main as well. They're not at that stage of the game yet. But these are chances for everyone to catch up with current ordinances. So when they want to crack it open, when they want to have an amendment, it brings everyone back to the table. And in this case, it let the Four River Sanitation say, you know what, now we used to let water sewer mains go in under private property. Now we require a dedicated easement over every linear foot of main. So they had to dedicate, the owner had to dedicate more easements than they had previously. the water department said, you know, we already stubbed in some infrastructure for this and it was designed for these 6, 8, 10 unit buildings. And it doesn't really translate to the duplexes you want to do. You're gonna have to take some of that water main out and replace it with a more appropriate layout. You know, that's certainly, we don't have one right in front of us, but it's good of you to, it's good that you know that this is a tool we have. I'd give you a lot of heads up if something like this is coming down the road and keep everyone involved in every step. And I have to be honest, I look forward to the opportunity if someone brought one. I've been part of them on the design side of it. I've been part of it on the review side as part of Rockford's ZBA. They're kind of exciting to work on and they can be a benefit to you.
But then I'm a little confused. I thought you said at the outset, if you had this to do over again, or maybe it was you would have done it differently.
What they would have done differently was not created this fictional zoning layer to call everything, to call all the zoning of this CPD. You can develop something as a PUD and still align different portions of development with a traditional zoning. So you could still say that, well, this is all governed by a PUD, that the zoning that lays over top of the multifamily, these were multifamily or commercial office, commercial retail, commercial office. It was questioned during our zoning rewrite, like this doesn't make sense. You have a zoning district listed on your map. It doesn't show up as a zoning district in your ordinances anywhere. It's semantics to a certain extent, but it creates confusion.
And there is no way to reach back and clean this.
Not on this. Force it out of the bar on this.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, I guess my last question. When Gelly came in with his plans for his additional duplexes a couple of months ago, and there was a conversation about the road and all of that. Where is he? Is he still working on this?
Not heard a peep back since that meeting. Right. So for example, what President Gustafson is referring to is we sort of had a final, as they are working through the final engineering documents for this remainder. This road, Rose Way, that is established here as the entrance, it has that little boulevard. It will not be a public road. That's a private drive. This is a private drive that will connect through. So we will not maintain it or plow it or have any long-term responsibility. Just the outer loop is public road in public right of way. But as they were connecting up here to Prairie Rose Drive, which is public right of way, they had a difference in widths. And so they were bringing, let's say, a 22-foot private drive up to a 24-foot existing stub. And it created a little taper. And we indicated that wasn't our preference, that we'd like to, if they have the right to have a 22-foot private drive, but if so, to remove this and reconstruct it so that it's all of the same. Let me see.
Are they connecting to the other stub too, or is that just gonna stay like?
No, that will be a private drive that comes back into the service and maintenance building for the whole property.
Why would they want a private drive? Then they'd have to maintain it.
I'll tell you, the reason they can't is because if it was dedicated as public right of way, then that brings all of our yard setbacks into play.
Okay.
If it's public right of way, now they have a 30-foot front yard setback and they can't. They are electing in their own development to let the buildings be closer to the road than we would ever let happen.
Gotcha.
But they're proposing to build it to urban standards with curb and gutter. That was outlined in the initial meeting. What I'm going to do, I'm going to email everyone the copy of all the documents and the staff report that we did for this modification of this PUD. Just so you can see the thought process that goes into making the determination as to minor or substantial and the actions that were the approval that was required. Just so you can see It's the only one we've done. No, we did, there was two out here. What's the other one? Oh, it was to add the Starbucks. We had to do a modification to add the Starbucks. Because that wasn't included, that outlot wasn't included in the initial PUD.
Scott, has there ever been any interest in that big plot that's by, for that new, right there? Is there-
The big one here,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it has,
What would be something that would fit there? Would that be a hotel location or?
but it certainly could be, but that wasn't what was proposed. Hotels have pretty specific criteria that they seek out. Like I've always said, I think, I'm not speaking in absolutes, but our best bet for hotels is at the Rockland Road exit. You know, they're gonna, hotelers are gonna look to try to capture the traveling public. I don't know that the interior of the village of Roscoe is gonna be considered to have enough overnight destination traffic to support a hotel. But what was going to be presented was a mixed-use development of commercial development on the Second Street frontage, commercial development wrapping up along the Prairie Rose Drive, and then single-family residential, but a modified single-family residential product. A smaller home, I don't know, it was being, we didn't get that far down the road, but being touted as a environmentally conscious home. The homes themselves weren't actually that much smaller than you would traditionally see, but they were oriented differently. They, instead of having most houses with their length facing the street, these were all oriented, they're single family homes and kind of all in a arts and crafts style, architectural style is what they showed me pictures of. But they wanted narrower lots. We have a minimum 90-foot lot width. They wanted to do like a 70-foot wide lot with a narrower, longer footprint. Lets them get a greater lot yield. Like I can't remember all the specifics of the advantage they're proposing for sort of an environmental design approach, but it was
What happened?
interesting.
They lost interest or the?
They didn't come to an agreement on the price of the land.
How many acres would you guess that is?
Oh, it's 30, probably.
30?
Yeah. 33. Close. But it has potential. And
No.
the village will still keep trying to facilitate development.
One day that will pass into somebody's estate.
Yeah,
And
and I've gotten to know the landowner well over the years. He's an instrumental, he plays a big picture
Right.
in the development of Roscoe, particularly this portion of Roscoe. He has, I can tell you, this is obviously public information. At one point, he decided to put all of his undeveloped parcels up for auction. He had 13 or 14 pieces of land in various sizes, and I called him after I knew the auction was done, and I said, "Al, how'd it go?" And he's not good. How many did you sell? He's like, not a one. What? He's like, no one met my reserve.
He is priced.
Yeah. So I like Al. He's got a softer side that you can get down to, and
Wouldn't that new credit union there, was that part of his land?
it was. And I will tell you, it's been exciting because Al, for my first 5 years here, all I heard was people failing, getting up to the finish line and then falling through. And since in just the last couple of years, he has sold this land south of Walgreens was his, I think, that he sold for a duplex and triplex development there. He sold this land to a Members Alliance Credit Union, and he sold a building. He sold this building that he owned to one of his tenants. So he's shown a willingness to part with properties.
That area not be a good one. Remember when Nelson came and wanted to put something on Main Street, that a repair place?
Absolutely.
Wouldn't that be good spot in that area?
It would,
Because I've talked to him, he's thinking of going to Rocket.
Yeah.
And the kind of place he was gonna build would be a benefit if you put it in the right location.
so here's the issue with it right now, though. His only choices would be to buy all 33 acres.
Oh, gotcha.
It's not subdivided yet. It's one 33-acre parcel. So he would either buy all 33 acres. At several $1 million, I'm sure. And
And that was the same thing Nowicki proposed to him, and so that was.
Okay. oh, yeah, that tracks. But or Al could,
What about the place right next to the RPM and that credit union? Is there a lot there? Not,
you know, this is set up, so this lot is big enough. That probably another building could be built here.
that's what I was thinking. That might be a good spot if you just restrict them from trying to sell cars, because an attractive repair shop. That would be a good location for it, I think. You know, because one of the things, as you recall it, he wanted to have it close where people could get out and go shopping.
He absolutely did, yeah.
All comes down to the price of the land.
But you
Well,
know,
it's also
that-
probably-
but you know the owner there?
Pardon?
You know that owner?
I'll say Ellen Aldi.
Yeah. I think it'd be worthwhile for us to at least Scott to talk to him and see if he might be interested, because.
Maybe Mr. Nelson has talked to him.
Well, which is,
He only had 2 locations, and that was not one of them he identified, so.
If I may, for a moment, whatever happened with the individual who proposed his antique car membership in Steve Priest, the former.
Mr. Queese was in last week. I asked that same question and he said that he has disappeared.
Oh, antique car where?
Oh, and the Lucky Lock building.
Yeah.
He was the person who had the idea of establishing a member subscription to belong to some automobile collectors club.
I think we just need to make that a bun cake place, like Carol, on your side.
I don't think there's enough space for a kitchen or bakery. Anyway, that's disappointing. That's too bad. Oh, wow. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Public comment?
I'll just ask one question as your
Yes.
follow-up.
Yes, Ken.
The plan development,
Yes, sir.
and if you went to an underlining zone. Residential, multifamily, commercial.
Yep.
Would you be able to still do mixed use? Or would it have? to
Oh,
be
absolutely.
commercial?
That piece of land might have 15, let's say it has 5 different zoning districts as part of it. So you would partition off the different uses proposed as part of the mixed use development and assign different zoning
So
overlays.
then the residential would, part of the unit would be over here, and the first would be over here, and if they wanted to switch them, then they'd have to go.
That's exactly right. Yep. Again, if they were able and willing to comply with ordinance as it's written, that's what they would just do, right? It's someone who's proposing something different from an alternative to established zoning and subdivision codes. And so it would force them again upfront to a higher level of commitment to design and construction. It's voicing exactly what they're to do, and then they are locked in unless they want to go through a modification process.
I had asked about the status of the use of our parks or ball diamonds. Could you give us an update briefly?
Sure. We have payment from both. We have documentations, the required documents from both. And I don't know if this is a park status. It's sort of ancillary to that, but it was discussed previously, so I'll address it. At one point, the Denny McKinney from State Line Fast Pitch had indicated to me an offer to pay for half of the HVAC improvements that we made. And when he took that back to his board, I believe trustee Gustafson, or President Gustafson, excuse me, spoke to this at that meeting, and she knew more than I did. I wasn't aware of it at this point. The board said what we would prefer to do is just make additional financial contributions to the village for them to be used as they see fit, but preferably in parks, of $500 a month year round.
Carol went to a meeting
That's my knowledge.
No, it was digging through somebody's seats and asking some questions.
So what they've been doing for the past 3 months now, since the board passed that action, they deliver a $500 check to us. They hand deliver a check every month. And we could put it towards, it just goes into the general fund. So you could say theoretically it's offsetting that expense.
Or light bulb replacement, whatever is needed out there.
And in Leland Park, we have an operational light post again, correct?
Yes.
Yes. That took a little while.
Have we gotten the information from that ball team regarding board members?
Yes. Yep. No need for executive session. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by trustee Petty,
Second,
second by trustee Babcock. Clerk, please call the roll.
Babcock,
yes.
Block,
Yes.
Malaco.
Yeah.
Simons,
Oh, you lost.
Yeah, he's off.
Okay.
Patty.
Yes.
Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you.
The clock, not bad.
Goes longer than 6 minutes.
It does, Alan.
That is Scott's.
I think I got a 30 though.
No.
Scott's defense, that is a Scott 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had it.
Just don't hold him to it, yeah.
7, 8.
I see you guys.
He doesn't go out.
Yes, Sam.
Again.
Yeah.
You do.
Thank you very much.